Cecilia, I love you with all my heart. Promise me that you will never leave me.
I love you, Mike. Only death will separate us.
I'm missing you seriously.
I miss you too, my baby. This service will soon be over.
I still remember that evening like it refused to leave my mind. The sky was calm, the air was soft, and the world felt like it had paused just for us. Cecilia stood in front of me, her eyes shining with a mixture of love and certainty, the kind of certainty that only young hearts can carry without fear. I held her hands tightly, not because I was afraid she would leave, but because I wanted to feel that moment forever. "Mike," she said, her voice steady, "promise me that no matter what happens, we will never leave each other." I smiled, that confident smile of a young man who believed he had life figured out. "Only death can separate us," I replied. She nodded, and we sealed that promise in silence, unaware that life had its own plans, plans that do not always ask for permission. My name is Mike, and this is the story of how love can grow, how sacrifice can shape it, how betrayal can shake it. Cecilia and I did not start as lovers. We started as two children who shared the same classroom in primary school. Our parents were wealthy, known in the city, and they ensured we had the best education. We wore clean uniforms, carried new bags, and had lunchboxes that made other children look twice. But beyond all that, Cecilia was different. She was kind, always ready to share, always ready to help. I remember one day in primary 4 when I forgot my lunch at home. I tried to act like I was not hungry, but she noticed. Without saying much, she pushed her lunchbox toward me. "Let's share," she said. That simple act stayed with me. From that day, we became close. We read together, played together, even got punished together when we talked too much in class. Our teachers often joked that we were inseparable. Secondary school only made things stronger. We were in the same school again, same class, same everything. By then, people had started noticing us. "Are you two dating?" classmates would ask. We would laugh it off. At that time, it felt too early to put a name to what we had. But deep inside, something was growing. Cecilia was becoming more beautiful, and I was becoming more aware of her presence. There were moments that made everything clearer, like the day a senior tried to embarrass her in school. I stepped in without thinking, and we both got punished. As we stood under the sun during punishment, she looked at me and smiled. "Thank you," she said. I shrugged. "I will always stand for you," I replied. It sounded simple then, but it was a promise in another form. By the time we reached our final year in secondary school, our friendship had already crossed into something deeper, even though we had not said it out loud. The day we finished our last exam, we walked out of the school gate together, slower than usual. It felt like we were stepping into a new phase of life. "What next?" she asked. "University," I replied. "Same university?" she added. I looked at her and smiled. "Of course." And somehow life agreed with us again. We both gained admission into the same university. Cecilia went into mass communication, and I went into computer science. Different departments, but the same campus. That was where everything truly began. University life was different. It was louder, freer, and full of distractions. For the first time, we were surrounded by people from different backgrounds, different mindsets, and different intentions. Cecilia quickly became popular. Her beauty, confidence, and intelligence made her stand out. It didn't take long before guys started showing interest. I remember one particular day at the faculty building. I was waiting for her when I saw a tall guy walk up to her. He was dressed sharply, clearly confident. He said something that made her smile. I felt something uncomfortable in my chest. When she came over to me, I asked, trying to sound casual, "Who was that?" She laughed. "Just someone who thinks he has a chance." I raised an eyebrow. "And does he?" She looked straight at me and said, "No one has a chance." That answer stayed with me. But it didn't stop the attempts. Flowers, gifts, messages, even dramatic public displays. One guy once stood in front of her hostel with a guitar, singing loudly. Students gathered, recording videos and laughing. Cecilia stood at her window, shaking her head. Later that evening, she told me, "This campus is full of drama." I laughed. "Get used to it." But it was not always funny. There were moments of tension. Jealousy tried to enter quietly. Our relationship became official in our second year. No big announcement, no dramatic scene, just a simple conversation under a tree on campus. "I think we already know what this is," she said. I smiled. "Yes, we do." And from that day, we were no longer just best friends. We were something more. University life tested us in many ways. There were academic pressures, group assignments, late-night readings, and moments of exhaustion. Sometimes we argued over small things, like when I forgot an important date, or when she felt I was not giving her enough attention. But we always found our way back. There were also funny moments, like the time I tried to cook noodles for her in my hostel and almost burned the pot. She laughed so hard that she couldn't even eat the food. "You should stick to computer science," she teased. And then there were the serious moments, like when she had a difficult course and almost gave up. I stayed up with her, helping her read, encouraging her. "You can do this," I told her. She did, and she passed. That was our pattern, supporting each other, lifting each other, growing together. 4 years passed like a fast-moving train. Before we knew it, we were wearing our graduation gowns, taking pictures, celebrating with our families. Our parents were happy. They had watched us grow from children into adults. They had seen our bond, but they had not yet seen the full picture. After graduation, we were both selected for the NYSC program. Once again, life aligned our paths. We were posted to the same orientation camp. The camp was a different experience entirely. Early morning drills, loud whistles, crowded hostels, and endless activities. It was stressful, but also exciting. Cecilia struggled with the early morning exercises. "Why do they wake people up like this?" she complained one morning. I laughed. "It's part of the training." "For training for what?" she asked. "For life," I replied. She rolled her eyes. We found ways to make the camp enjoyable. We attended social nights, watched performances, and even participated in group activities together. There were new people, new friendships, and new experiences. But even in that crowded environment, we remained focused on each other. One evening, during a quiet moment at the camp, we sat together, looking at the sky. That was when we made that promise, the promise that started this story. "Only death can separate us," we said. At that time, it felt true. After the orientation camp, reality set in again. We were posted to different locations for our primary assignments. It was the first real separation we had experienced in years. It was not easy. The distance tested us in new ways. Phone calls replaced physical presence. Messages replaced long conversations. We tried to stay strong, reminding ourselves of our promise. But life was already moving in a direction we didn't fully understand. and somewhere ahead, waiting quietly, was a truth that would change everything we believed about love.
Distance has a way of testing what closeness once made easy, and I learned that slowly, day by day, after Cecilia and I left the orientation camp and went to different places for our primary assignments. I was posted to a busy city where everything moved fast, where work started early and ended late, and where people hardly had time to think about love. Cecilia, on the other hand, was posted to a quieter town, the kind of place where evenings were long and conversations carried deeper meaning. At first, we handled it well. We called every morning before starting our day and every night before sleeping. We shared everything, from the stress of work to the little funny things that happened around us. "You won't believe what happened today," she would say, and I would listen carefully, smiling even when I was tired. Sometimes the network would fail and we would get frustrated, but we always found our way back to each other. We held on to our promise like it was something physical, something we could lose if we were not careful. But distance is not always loud when it starts doing its work. Sometimes it moves quietly. Weeks turned into months and responsibilities increased. I had more tasks at my place of assignment, and Cecilia began to settle into her own routine. There were days when I missed her calls and called back late. There were days when she sounded tired and ended conversations quickly. Nothing felt wrong at first, but something was changing. Still, we kept going, reminding ourselves that this was temporary, that at the end of our service year we would be together again. There were moments of laughter too. One time, Cecilia told me about a student in her office who kept trying to impress her with big grammar but ended up confusing himself. I laughed so hard that people around me looked at me strangely. "This boy wants to impress me but cannot even construct a simple sentence," she said, and we both laughed again. Those moments helped us hold on. But there were also moments of pressure. People around Cecilia noticed her beauty and her calm nature. Even in that small town, men started showing interest. Some were bold, some were subtle. She told me about them, not to make me jealous, but to be honest. "They don't know I already belong to someone," she said one evening. I smiled. "And you remind them, right?" She replied, "Always." I trusted her, but I also felt the weight of being far away. On my side, I was not free from attention either. There were female colleagues who tried to get close, some out of curiosity, some out of interest. But I kept my distance. I knew what I had, and I believed it was worth protecting. Our love was not perfect, but it was strong. At least that was what I thought. When our NYSC year finally came to an end, it felt like a victory. We had survived the distance. We had stayed committed. We had kept our promise. The day we reunited, it felt like everything was complete again. I saw her, and for a moment, nothing else mattered. We held each other, smiling like we had been given another chance at something precious. "We made it," she said. "Yes," I replied, "we did." That reunion strengthened our decision. We were ready for the next step, marriage. It was no longer just a dream, it was a plan. We spoke to our parents, and at first everything seemed smooth. Our families already knew each other from years back. They had seen us grow together. They had watched our friendship turn into something deeper. So when we told them about our intention to get married, there was no immediate resistance. Preparations began slowly. Discussions about dates, venues, and future plans filled our conversations. Cecilia was excited. I was excited too. It felt like everything was finally falling into place. But life has a way of hiding certain truths until the moment they can no longer be ignored. One evening, Cecilia called me. Her voice was not the usual one I was used to. It carried something heavy. "Mike," she said, "my mom asked me a question today." I sensed something was wrong. "What question?" I asked. She paused for a moment before answering. She asked about your genotype. I went silent. Not because I did not know my genotype, but because it was something we had never discussed, not once. All these years, all these promises, all these plans, and we never asked each other that simple question. "What did you tell her?" I asked. She replied, "I will find out." That night I could not sleep properly. The question stayed in my mind, moving from one corner to another. The next day I went to the hospital and did the test again to just be sure. I waited for the result with a strange feeling in my chest. When the result came out, I looked at it carefully. AS. I told myself it was fine. It was just information, nothing more. I called Cecilia. "I got my result," I said. "Me too," she replied. There was a pause. Then she said it. "I am AS." The silence that followed was different from any silence we had shared before. It was heavy, real, and full of meaning. "I am also AS," I said slowly. We both knew what that meant, but at the same time, we didn't want to accept it immediately. "Maybe it's not a big issue," I said, trying to sound hopeful. "Maybe there is a way." Cecilia did not respond immediately. When she finally spoke, her voice was low. "Mike, my mom already explained it." Reality began to settle in. AS and AS, not compatible. The risk, the complications, the future we hadn't considered, it all came rushing in at once. "So what do we do?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer was not going to be easy. "I don't know," she replied, and for the first time in a long time, I heard her voice carry something close to helplessness. The days that followed were difficult. We tried to find solutions, tried to look for exceptions, tried to hold on to hope, but the truth remained the same. Our families got involved, and the discussions became more serious. Cecilia's mother was firm. "Love is not enough," she said. "You must think about the future, about the children." Those words felt like a wall we couldn't climb. Cecilia cried. I tried to stay strong, but it was not easy. All the years, all the memories, all the sacrifices, and now this. Something we never considered was now standing between us. "We promised each other," Cecilia said one day, tears in her eyes. "We said only death can separate us." I looked at her, feeling the weight of everything we had built together. "I know," I replied. "I remember." But this was not death. This was something else, something we couldn't fight with emotions alone. In the end, the decision was made, not because we stopped loving each other, but because we had to face reality. The marriage was called off, just like that. No celebration, no wedding, just silence and pain. We went our separate ways, not as strangers, but as two people who once shared something deep and real. Time moved on, as it always does. Life continued, but something remained, a lesson, a painful one. Love is powerful, but it is not the only thing that matters. There are questions that must be asked, truths that must be known, and decisions that must be made with both the heart and the mind. If we had asked earlier, maybe the pain would have been less. Maybe the story would have been different, but we didn't. And so our story became a message. To every young person in love, do not ignore the important things. Do not be carried away by feelings alone. Ask questions, understand each other fully, because sometimes what you don't know can hurt you the most. Cecilia and I once believed nothing could come between us. We believed our love was stronger than anything, but in the end, we learned something we never expected. They promised each other that it is only death that can separate them, but it was genotype that later separated them.
This is Beyond Stories, where every story carries a lesson, and every lesson touches the heart. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that could inspire your next step.